Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a short story that I read, one that is about a contemporary modern classic author. It's about a married couple and suicide. I am referring to A Perfect Day for Bananafish by J.D. Salinger. For those who don't know, J.D. Salinger, or Jason Derulo Salinger, as he was more properly known, he was a writer during the mid-20th century, writing from pretty much the 1940s onward. He was known for one thing in particular, which is The Catcher in the Rye, but he has written other things, including short stories, which I'll be talking about today, and other books too. He seemed to be a bit of a reclusive in that he didn't like too much attention drawn to him. Which is understandable, and he would often sue in order to take some of that attention off of him, or even prevent people from really capitalizing off of his work. He tried to sue to prevent someone from coming out with a sequel to The Catcher in the Rye, which is fair. That's it doesn't need a sequel, and also it's like his work. So if you try to make a sequel to it, it comes off a bit plagiarizing. Like, I can definitely understand plagiarism in that case. He also served during World War II, and it seems like he was disillusioned after the war, which kind of shows up in his work, especially The Catcher in the Rye. I should note, though, that I've only read The Catcher in the Rye and A Perfect Day for Bananafish. So, that's my only experience with J.D. Salinger. I would like to read more of his work and also to talk about The Catcher in the Rye on this channel, because I'm a big fan of the book. I like the themes that are explored, and I know a lot of people think like Holden Caulfield is an overrated character, but there's a lot worth exploring with his character. And so, a whole bunch of stuff about Jason Derulo Salinger, an interesting author. But without further ado, let's talk about the short story at hand. I will summarize A Perfect Day for Bananafish, and then I'll do a little analysis, and we will move on from there. Perfect Day for Bananafish, written in 1948, one of J.D. Salinger's first stories, begins with Muriel Glass. The character Muriel Glass is at a hotel with her husband Seymour, and she's been trying to call her mom all day, and she finally gets through, and her mom is concerned about her whereabouts and her safety. And through her conversation with her mom, it's eventually revealed that the mom is a bit worried about Seymour because he seems to be mentally unstable. He might be dealing with some mental illness. He's seeing a psychiatrist, and he appears to have had some sort of break with reality, although it's not expounded upon, but it is clear that the mom and dad are worried about Muriel. However, Muriel dismisses her mom's worries and asserts that he's seeing a psychiatrist and he seems to be doing fine, and he's down at the beach right now wearing his robe and sunbathing. Although, how do you sunbathe while wearing the robe? And it seems like she's ignoring some of the persistent problems with Seymour. And so after she hangs up on her mother, she takes a nap. And then the story then moves on to Seymour and Sybil. Apparently Sybil is from another one of the stories that J.D. Salinger has been writing, but I wasn't so familiar with her. Seymour is on the beach when Sybil comes up to him, and they begin to have a conversation. It seems she wants attention, and she wants it over another girl named Sharon. And even though they're both pretty young, I think too young for Seymour, they fight for his attention. And Seymour just simply notes that Sybil was being mean to a dog earlier, so why would he focus primarily on her? But he takes her into the water, and he begins to talk about bananafish, which I don't think are actually real. It might just represent his break with reality. But he talks about the bananafish, how they enter the banana plant and they eat too much, and then they can't get out and they end up dying, changed by the events of their lives, it would seem. And so, after he's done swimming with Sybil, he kisses her feet, kisses her legs, or something like that. It's very weird, and I'm not totally sure, what that represents, or even like how that's not, sexual assault on Seymour's part. But Sybil eventually leaves, and then Seymour goes back to the hotel, and along the way he has a conflict with another hotel patron, where it seems he goes out of his way to fight with the patron and accuses them of looking at his feet or something like that, and the patron asserts that they were not just looking at the ground, and so Seymour is upset, and he goes up to his room, and Muriel is sleeping. He takes out his revolver and he shoots himself. And it ends on that very blunt, very tragic note right there. I do have to say that I admire Salinger's bluntness at the end of this story. In terms of analysis, there is a bit to talk about with this story. One element in particular is disillusionment, or the representation of the post-war view of veterans. Because, after World War II, things weren't exactly easy for veterans. They were dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder in a society that didn't completely understand those things. They called it shell shock or soldier or battle fatigue or something like that, and there still wasn't a complete understanding of what PTSD, and so as a result, you end up with people either ignoring the problems of someone with PTSD or demonizing them in particular. I think Muriel in particular ignores the PTSD because, one, she might not love Seymour. It seems like she got married shortly before the war, as did so many others, and so it was a matter of I gotta get married quickly rather than actually falling in love with someone. And so she doesn't seem to be aware of his conditions, and if she is, she just shrugs them off and is like, oh, that's not a big deal. He was perfectly capable of driving down here, and he's played the piano, and he's down at the beach. But she notes that he's in his robe, and that's not what people do. They sunbathe, and eventually Seymour takes off his robe. But that's not the point. The point is that Muriel is ignoring, maybe actively so, all of these problems, because maybe she can't deal with it. And the medicine at the time, the psychiatrist at the time, they didn't have a complete understanding either. And then you have what Muriel's mom is doing in this story. She's demonizing Seymour's mental illness. She's like, oh, he's a danger to you, he's a danger to others. And it's just like, if he got the care and attention that he needed, he wouldn't pose so much of a danger. Her mom and dad are worried that Muriel is going to get hurt, and if it was up to them, they would have gotten divorced, and Muriel would be away from Seymour. But demonizing the mental illness there just isolates Seymour even further. And so, if you pretend that nothing's wrong, or you demonize mental illness, the only thing that you succeed in doing is not giving someone the care they need in time. And indeed, that seems to be what happens in this story, because no one pays attention to Seymour in the manner that he needs, and he ends up shooting himself. The consequences of ignoring persistent issues is that more damage is done to an individual. Not everyone's going to kill themselves, but it's certainly not going to leave them worse off for the matter. And this is something that Salinger has touched upon in multiple other stories, from what I've heard and from my own experience with The Catcher in the Rye. I do like that he was talking about that, because not many people were talking about that in post-war America. You especially got in the post-war 1940s, where everyone was ready to go on with America. And in the 1950s, where you have that happy suburban life, well, all these issues were going on and nobody wanted to talk about it. And that, I think that pretty much mentally wounded a large part of the generation. Another thing worth talking about is that of the banana fish. The banana fish doesn't exist. So what does it represent for Salinger and Seymour in this story? I think it represents how your life experience changes you, sometimes not for the better. There's a good quote that I would like to read to you from this story. "They lead a very tragic life," he said. "You know what they do, Sybil?" She shook her head. "Well, they swim into a hole where there's a lot of bananas. They're very ordinary looking fish when they swim in, but once they get in, they behave like pigs. Why, I've known some banana fish to swim into a banana hole and eat as many as 78 bananas." He edged the float and its passenger a foot closer to the horizon. "Naturally, after that, they're so fat they can't get out of the hole again, can't fit through the door." "Not too far out," Sybil said. "What happens to them?" "What happens to who?" "The banana fish." "Oh, you mean after they eat so many bananas they can't get out of the banana hole?" "Yes," said Sybil. "Well, I hate to tell you, Sybil, they die." And that's what Sybil and Seymour are talking about as he drifts her further out into the beach waters. And so what does the banana fish represent in this story? As I mentioned before, change. The banana fish get into the banana hole, or the banana plant, or whatever it is. They eat a whole bunch of bananas, and then they're too fat to get out and they die. Changed by their life experiences. Is the same thing happening to Seymour here, where his experience with war and society's expectations and everything that's going on for him, did that cause him to develop this mental illness, which ultimately led to his death? So changed by his life experiences that the only thing that can happen for him is to either receive the therapeutic help that he needs or to die. I think that's a good explanation. It might be what Salinger is getting at, especially because the banana fish doesn't exist. But perhaps I am off with my with my analysis here, and I would be welcome any of your whoever's listening out there, watching out there, to provide some insight, because I don't completely get some of the details there. One thing that bothers me with this story that I don't quite get is the story element itself. I think the story doesn't quite click for me in terms of understanding it, in terms of the story being coming through with all of its themes and its message. And I don't know if that's because Salinger was clumsy with his part of the story, or if I'm just not understanding what's going on. And one thing that I particularly don't understand is the Sybil character. Like, what does she represent? Why is she why is she getting so attached to Seymour? Does she represent the innocence of youth or something like that? And Seymour is the more reality of what life turns you into? I don't completely understand. Also, why does Seymour start to kiss Sybil's legs and stuff like that? It's a little intimate in my opinion, and kind of weird. And is it representative of Seymour's break, or is it something more? I don't know. Do I need to read more? Because apparently Salinger touched upon these characters in other short stories that he wrote, and so maybe reading more will provide that insight. But again, because this is a short story, I think it should stand by itself in some way, and it doesn't quite do that. There's a lot of questions that are thrown up in the air, but I do like the ending, how blunt it is, and I do think Salinger manages to connect there. So even if the rest of the story doesn't quite click, there are some decent parts to it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on A Perfect Day for Bananafish by J.D. Salinger. I'm gonna have to say I do recommend it because Salinger is a good writer, and even if some of the story elements don't click for me, they might click for you. There might be something that I'm missing here that a comment from someone might clear up. I should also talk to Lucas from The Bits of Lit about this, because I think he's read a great deal of Salinger literature. I didn't want to talk to him before I did my analysis, because that would have just been too much insight that might have guided my review and my talking about it. So definitely worth checking out. I'll put a link to it in the comments so that you can find it. Otherwise, don't forget to comment below if you read this before or you simply want to talk about my review. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about non-Catcher in the Rye Salinger works. He has more out there, and it's worth exploring, I think. And other than that, I wish you the best of times in your weird and banana fish travels. Farewell.